Central Europe stood at ancient crossroads. Empires collided, traded, negotiated endlessly. There, cultures mixed before borders were imagined. History unfolded in overlapping layers constantly. From these crossroads rose Habsburg ambition. Dynasty expanded through marriage, diplomacy, strategy. Land accumulated without grand battlefield victories. Power built through patience, not recklessness. Vienna emerged as imperial heartland. Streets filled with music and officials. Culture flourished alongside rigid bureaucracy. Capital projected elegance, authority, and restraint. The empire became distinctly multi-ethnic region. Germans, Hungarians, Czechs, Slovaks, Croats, Romanians. Diversity defined daily life across provinces. Difference replaced uniform national identity completely. Bound not by nationhood, but monarchy. Crowns served as single binding symbol. Allegiance flowed upward toward imperial dynasty. Unity depended on loyalty, not ethnicity. Governing such diversity proved delicate constantly. Languages, laws, customs varied dramatically everywhere. Conflicts simmered beneath ceremonial stability. Tolerance mixed uneasily with control measures. The empire balanced east and west. Orthodox, Catholics, Jews, Muslims lived together. Religions shaped communities without separation walls. Pluralism existed before modern definitions emerged. Diplomacy became empire's survival instrument. Negotiations replaced revolts whenever possible. Rulers engineered compromise across ethnic lines. Peace maintained through negotiation, not domination. Yet unity remained fragile beneath grandeur. National movements gathered strength over decades. Modern identity clashed with imperial traditions. Crowns struggled to satisfy rising demands. Thus stood the Austro-Hungarian Empire, a giant, elegant, fragile, and complex, held together by monarchy and compromise, awaiting a crisis that history promised. If you enjoyed this full documentary today, subscribe to the channel and turn notifications on. Share your thoughts and suggestions in the comments. Stay tuned for more incredible history stories soon. Habsburg origins rooted in alpine lands. Small lords managing frontier mountain passes. Local influence tied to feudal loyalties. Regional identity shaped by shifting borders. Ambitious counts seeking lasting family prestige. Form alliances through calculated diplomatic gestures. Strength in patience rather than sudden force. Long-term strategy over reckless expansion attempts. Swiss territories provide early power base. Castles overlooking rivers secure trade routes. Merchants welcome safe passage and protection. Wealth slowly accumulates alongside local respect. Noble rivals challenge Habsburg ambitions. Conflicts settled through negotiation and marriages. Bloodshed avoided to maintain regional stability. Diplomacy proves more profitable than war. Feudal obligations reinforce Habsburg authority. Knights pledge loyalty for shared benefits. Land grants strengthen mutual political dependence. Networks grow across valleys and towns. Church officials endorse Habsburg leadership. Religious approval grants powerful moral legitimacy. Clergy influence spread through countryside parishes. Faith intertwines with early political power. Regional councils recognize Habsburg stewardship. Administrative reforms raise bureaucratic efficiency. Records of land rights become standardized. Order helps expand noble influence peacefully. Habsburgs cultivate image of responsible governors. Protect peasants from lawless opportunistic raiders. Justice administered through consistent public courts. Trust forms between rulers and subjects. Trade guilds flourish under stable conditions. Artisans produce goods for distant markets. Economic improvements boost family reputation significantly. Prosperity turns into political bargaining chips. Neighboring dynasties take cautious interest. Habsburg diplomacy avoids direct provocation. Mutual treaties define borders and obligations. Slow consolidation replaces chaotic fragmentation. Chivalric culture shapes noble expectations. Honor and lineage guide marital decisions. Status becomes currency in elite politics. Family heritage steadily increases in value. Educated scribes record Habsburg genealogy. Ancestral claims crafted for a future advantage. History becomes weapon in noble competition. Narratives justify escalating territorial aspirations. By 13th century, influence expands outward. Former rivals become cooperative regional allies. Habsburg name travels beyond Alpine homeland. Foundations of greater dynasty quietly forming, rising prestige still fragile and uncertain. No empire yet, only patient groundwork. Regional nobility evolving into ruling dynasty. Momentum building toward continental significance. Royal marriage becomes diplomatic masterstroke. No armies marching, only wedding processions. Contracts signed beneath heraldic banners. Territories exchanged through legal clauses. Brides carry dowries of fertile lands. Grooms bring alliances and military assurances. Families merge claims across contested borders. Europe watches with cautious admiration. Habsburg motto spreads quietly, let others fight. Marriage replaces battle-filled confrontation cleverly. Costs lower yet rewards dramatically higher. Warfare avoided through matrimonial brilliance. Bohemia entered through marital negotiation. Hungary linked by dynastic inheritance. Spanish crowns approached through arranged unions. Continents bridge via royal bloodlines. Noble courts celebrate strategic ceremonies. Bishops sanctify political partnerships publicly. Chroniclers document lineage for future disputes. Every detail matters for territorial validation. Marriage contracts include succession contingencies. Heirs predetermined before vows exchanged. If lineage fails, lands revert accordingly. Law safeguards political investment meticulously. Mothers advise daughters on political etiquette. Charm becomes statecraft behind palace curtains. Influence wielded during banquets and audiences. Soft power thrives in gilded residences. Competing dynasties fear Habsburg expansion. No battles lose, yet territories gained. Diplomatic victories reshape continental balance. Enemies complain of unfair peaceful tactics. Legal scholars refine inheritance frameworks. Genealogy transforms into territorial blueprint. Claims stretch beyond mountains and rivers. Lawyers become soldiers in parchment armor. Marital alliances require long-term patience. Generations must uphold treaty obligations. Rulers wait for deaths, births, successions. Time becomes key geopolitical weapon. Europe's map shifts without cannon fire. Borders adjust after aristocratic funerals. Treaties renewed during baptismal celebrations. Power transferred through cradle and coffin. Foreign courts send daughters as bargaining tokens. Personal choice sacrificed for state interests. Duty outweighs romantic aspirations consistently. Royal lives designed for political utility. By 16th century, unions span multiple regions. Habsburgs collect crowns instead of fortresses. Empire stitched through matrimonial diplomacy. Family tree replaces territorial conquest. Marriages create multinational Habsburg network, from Iberia to Central European heartlands. Alliances yield unprecedented dynastic leverage. Europe witnesses empire built by wedding rings. Subtle strategy proves astonishingly effective. Influence multiplies without raising armies. Diplomacy redefines continental power structures. Marriage becomes empire's strongest foundation. Austria becomes core territorial stronghold. Vienna emerges as administrative command center. Local nobles integrate into imperial hierarchy. Regional power now structured and centralized. Bohemia offers vast mineral resources. Silver mines strengthen imperial financial stability. Wealth funds diplomatic and military operations. Economic power reinforces political authority. Czech elites negotiate privileged legal status. Cultural autonomy preserved through royal charters. Religious diversity tolerated for pragmatic reasons. Stability prioritized over forced unification. Hungarian borders tested by external threats. Ottoman frontier demands constant vigilance. Armies assembled to defend eastern marches. Frontier warfare shapes military organization. Alpine passes connect northern and southern trade. Merchants travel safely under imperial guarantees. Taxes collected from caravans and guilds. Commerce becomes lifeline of territorial cohesion. Regional diets advise monarchs on governance. Local laws blended with imperial decrees. Consensus pursued to prevent costly revolts. Negotiation replaces arbitrary royal domination. German-speaking regions provide administrative expertise. Latin remains legal, an ecclesiastical language. Multilingual bureaucracy evolves organically. Diversity becomes structural imperial feature. Nobles maintain privileges, yet share loyalty. Balance is struck between autonomy and obedience. Crown respects ancient customs when beneficial. Cooperation ensures smoother territorial integration. Fortifications erected along vulnerable corridors. Castles guard river crossings and trade arteries. Military engineers improve defensive capacity. Security reinforces economic prosperity continuously. Clergy mediate disputes between ethnic groups. Religion leveraged for social cohesion efforts. Church institutions support imperial communication. Faith functions as diplomatic common denominator. Bohemian cities flourish under stable rule. Craft guilds expand production for export. Urban wealth fuels cultural patronage widely. Architecture and learning experience marked growth. Administrative reforms reduce corruption effectively. Records standardized across multiple jurisdictions. Officials appointed based on competence increasingly. Empire becomes more professionally managed. Border regions granted special protections. Frontier settlers receive tax exemptions strategically. Incentives encourage population growth and loyalty. Peripheral territories knit into imperial fabric. Crown courts adjudicate complex territorial claims. Legal clarity prevents internodal conflict escalation. Justice strengthens imperial legitimacy over decades. Rule of law becomes recognizable Habsburg trait. By early modern era, control solidifies firmly. Austria and Bohemia anchor imperial dominion. Surrounding lands contribute strategic depth. Core territories define emerging continental empire. Imperial crown elevates Habsburg status. Authority recognized across German principalities. Symbolic power reinforces territorial legitimacy. Ceremony amplifies influence beyond family lands. Election by princes grants constitutional framework. Monarch rules through negotiated obligations. Consent replaces unchecked autocratic authority. Empire governed by legal compromise mechanisms. Imperial diets convene in major cities. Princes debate taxation and military levies. Delegates defend regional privileges intensely. Politics unfolds through measured deliberation. Imperial courts settle interstate disputes. Judges rely on codified Roman law. Verdicts bind rival nobles peacefully. Justice becomes instrument of imperial unity. Coronation rituals impress foreign ambassadors. Gold regalia symbolizes ancient Roman continuity. Prestige radiates across European diplomatic circles. Ceremony reinforces metaphysical sovereign authority. Papal endorsement strengthens spiritual dimension. Church validates emperor's universal mission. Faith legitimizes secular administrative control. Dual power defines medieval governance structure. Imperial cities gain protections and autonomy. Merchants grow confident under imperial safeguards. Trade flourishes across Rhine and Danube. Economic vitality boosts imperial relevance. Knights pledge service during imperial campaigns. Military contingents drawn from diverse regions. Unified command projects continental strength. War becomes constitutional prerogative of emperor. Habsburg diplomacy manages fractious German princes. Threats of fragmentation skillfully mitigated. Balance maintained through calculated concessions. Empire survives through delicate political choreography. Legal scholars articulate imperial sovereignty theories. Works circulate among clerics and administrators. Ideas justify coordinated governance frameworks. Intellectual labor sustains institutional continuity. Foreign monarchs respect imperial titles deeply. Rank matters in aristocratic protocol systems. Habsburgs enjoy precedence at European courts. Prestige becomes tangible diplomatic currency. Imperial authority resists French territorial ambitions. Rival monarchies test constitutional boundaries. Diplomatic confrontations replace open warfare. Negotiation preserves fragile continental equilibrium. Symbolic unity overrides ethnic diversity. Multiple peoples accept shared imperial umbrella. Loyalty expressed through taxes and ceremonies. Universal empire ideal remains culturally potent. Habsburgs inherit mantle of Roman legitimacy. Continuity imagined across centuries of rule. Ancient empire reborn in legal fiction. Myth bolsters modern political authority. By 17th century prestige firmly entrenched. Imperial crown cements family's global standing. Authority legitimizes future dynastic expansions. Holy Empire strengthens Habsburg continental ambitions. Dynasty building becomes central political objective. Territories secured for future generations. Empire imagined as multi-century enterprise. Strategic patience guides every major decision. Legal claims woven through genealogical charts. Succession mapped across diverse royal houses. Future crowns targeted through meticulous planning. Bloodline becomes blueprint for continental dominance. Territorial clusters gradually interlinked. Austria anchors central administrative structures. Bohemia adds economic and cultural weight. Hungary supplies strategic military frontier. Dutch lands contribute commercial expertise. Italian possessions enhance artistic patronage. Spanish alliances extend transatlantic networks. Global influence emerges from European core. Bureaucracy expands to manage complexity. Clerks record laws, taxes, and censuses. Professional governance replaces feudal improvisation. Administrative order reinforces imperial coherence. Education cultivated among noble heirs. Diplomacy taught alongside classical languages. Future rulers groomed for continental negotiations. Knowledge becomes tool of statecraft. Church cooperation strengthens imperial moral authority. Clergy defend legitimacy in political disputes. Faith employed to bind disparate subjects. Religion supports long-term imperial integration. Infrastructure developed for imperial mobility. Roads maintained for armies and couriers. Communication ensures rapid policy enforcement. Distance becomes manageable through logistics. Imperial symbolism grows increasingly important. Coats of arms display territorial claims. Ceremony expresses hierarchy and unity. Imagery reinforces dynastic permanence. Foreign courts recognize Habsburg continuity. Rivals rely on temporary alliances. Habsburgs invest in generational commitments. Long timelines favor dynastic strategies. Population diversity absorbed without annihilation. Local customs tolerated within legal limits. Autonomy exchange for loyalty and stability. Pluralism becomes imperial strength rather than threat. Economic networks link multiple regions. Trade circulates through river and caravan routes. Tax revenue funds diplomatic initiatives. Wealth fuels dynastic expansion ambitions. Foundations laid for continental hegemony. Territories secured. Prestige firmly established. Dynasty positioned for global influence. Empire's architecture ready for future centuries. Habsburg project no longer regional, now unmistakably European in scale. Dynastic model defines foreign policy. Empire built through bloodlines and treaties. Austrian power strained before battlefield crisis. Industrial lag weakens military modernization. Diplomats misread Prussian strategic intentions. Europe senses shifting balance of power. 7 weeks war erupts with stunning speed. Prussian armies advance with railroad logistics. Needle guns outperform outdated Austrian rifles. Technology dictates outcome in brutal clarity. Key battles unfold across Bohemian countryside. Austrian formations struggle with coordination. Prussian command proves swift and decisive. Tactics reveal widening institutional gap. Battle of Königgrätz seals Austrian defeat. Thousands fall within devastating hours. Casualties shock conservative European monarchies. Modern warfare exposes old vulnerabilities brutally. Political humiliation follows military disaster. Austria expelled from German Confederation structures. Hopes of leading unified Germany collapse. Prussia claims new continental leadership role. International observers note strategic transformation. Berlin becomes center of German national project. Vienna shifts focus toward southeastern interests. Diplomacy reorients after existential setback. Domestic tensions amplify post-war uncertainties. Hungarians demand long-promised constitutional rights. Czechs debate future within imperial framework. National movements gain unprecedented confidence. Aristocratic elites question imperial direction. State reforms deemed urgently necessary. Military modernization becomes unavoidable priority. Reformists argue for structural political changes. Fiscal burdens mount after rapid mobilization. War debts pressure imperial finances heavily. Tax systems prove outdated and insufficient. Creditors demand administrative accountability reforms. Newspapers broadcast crisis to urban populations. Political discourse moves beyond court circles. Public opinion becomes emerging political force. Empire confronts modern mass communication realities. Prussian victory inspires nationalist comparisons. Rival empires examine weaknesses anxiously. Consensus grows on need for modernization. Status quo appears dangerously unsustainable. Foreign courts reassess alliances and partnerships. Austria perceived as weakened diplomatic actor. Prussia obtains respect through battlefield efficiency. Balance of power recalculated across Europe. Military officers study Prussian organizational model. General staff concept attracts Austrian interest. Training academies push for professionalization. War lessons institutionalized in formal doctrine. Defeat becomes catalyst for internal restructuring. No longer possible to ignore social pressures. Political concessions viewed as strategic necessity. Empire forced into painful self-reflection. By mid-1860s, dominance clearly diminished. Prussia emerges new German hegemon power. Austria prepares for constitutional transformation. Defeat seeds birth of dual monarchy. Hungarian nationalism predates recent conflicts. 1848 revolution of unresolved constitutional questions. Magyar elites preserved political aspirations. Memory of uprising fuels persistent demands. Austrian centralization sparks resentment in Budapest. German language bureaucracy alienates local society. Cultural identity becomes political battleground. Language rights tied to national dignity. Landowning magnates organize reform committees. Nobles coordinate strategy through parliaments. Negotiations framed as restoration of legality. Autonomy justified via historical constitutional rights. Press champions Hungarian self-government vigorously. Books and pamphlets circulate among students. Debates igniting cafes and universities. Intellectual culture nourishes national sentiment. Prussian victory changes political environment. Vienna weakened. Budapest emboldened immediately. Empire's vulnerability increases bargaining leverage. Magyar seize advantageous diplomatic moment. Austrian officials recognize emerging necessity. Compromise begins replacing imperial absolutism. Pragmatism overrides ideological centralization goals. Officials search for workable constitutional formula. Hungarian leaders present unified negotiation front. Demands articulated with legal precision. Emphasis on equal partnership within empire. Not secession, but dignified constitutional status. Rural populations support autonomy movements. Local identity reinforces nationalist projects. Administrative reforms promised for countryside governance. Peasants expect relief from bureaucratic intrusion. Cultural policies form critical negotiation area. Schools become instruments of nation building. Curricula emphasize Hungarian heritage narratives. Education strengthens political consciousness steadily. Hungarian Diet resumes intense parliamentary sessions. Speeches challenge imperial legislative supremacy. Legal scholars cite ancient coronation contracts. History weaponized in constitutional debate. International observers follow events attentively. Other nationalities watch autonomy struggle. Movement seen as model for compromise. Europe anticipates structural imperial transformation. Vienna evaluates risks of outright refusal. Military force deemed politically dangerous. New revolts could destabilize entire empire. Statesmen choose dialogue over confrontation. Negotiations test loyalty and flexibility. Imperial court fears domino effect. Minorities might demand similar privileges. Compromise must avoid uncontrolled fragmentation. Hungarian leaders insist on dual sovereignty. Single monarch, but distinct constitutional systems. Common interests limited to shared matters. Framework pushes empire toward new architecture. By mid-1860s, momentum fully irreversible. Autonomy demands reach decisive breakthrough stage. Hungarians position strongly for final settlement. Compromise becomes pathway to preserve empire. Compromise negotiations enter decisive phase. Delegates draft constitutional settlement meticulously. Mutual concessions replace entrenched suspicions. Diplomacy becomes instrument of survival. Agreement establishes dual sovereign arrangements. Austria and Hungary recognized as equals. Each retains internal governmental autonomy. Monarch links to constitutional entities. Common ministries handle limited joint affairs. Foreign policy managed under imperial direction. Finance shared for military and diplomatic responsibilities. Coordination ensures coherent international posture. Legal text reconciles competing interpretations. Hungarians demand historic constitutional continuity. Austrians emphasize modern administrative coherence. Formula blends tradition and modernization seamlessly. National pride accommodated without secession. Unity preserved through institutional innovation. Structure respects separate political identities. Empire survives through constitutional engineering. Coronation ceremony legitimizes new settlement. Monarch crowned King of Hungary formally. Symbolic gestures reassure Magyar political elites. Ritual strengthens legitimacy of compromise. Viennese newspapers praise pragmatic statesmanship. Budapest press celebrates constitutional victory. Public opinion cautiously optimistic about arrangement. Dialogue triumphs over revolutionary violence. Economic ties benefit from restored stability. Investment resumes across imperial markets. Railways expand between key urban centers. Commerce thrives under predictable governance. Minority nationalities analyze implications carefully. Czechs demand parallel political recognition. South Slavs consider regional autonomy claims. Compromise triggers wider national expectations. International reaction largely positive and relieved. Foreign diplomats prefer stable Habsburg frontier. Europe avoids chaotic imperial fragmentation. Balance of power remains mostly undisturbed. Critics warn of unresolved ethnic issues. Dual structure may neglect other populations. Future tension predicted in border regions. Settlement seen as incomplete long-term solution. Nonetheless, compromise averts immediate collapse. Empire adapts through constitutional flexibility. Dynasty preserves continental strategic relevance. Political reinvention postpones imperial dissolution. Framework becomes defining model of coexistence. Shared monarchy governs diverse polities jointly. Administration divided, yet diplomatically coordinated. Institutional novelty admired by foreign observers. By 1867, new era officially begins. Austro-Hungarian project reshapes imperial identity. Compromise secures dynasty's survival temporarily. State reborn through constitutional innovation. Dual monarchy formalizes shared sovereign arrangement. One emperor presides over two governments. Symbolic unity maintained through royal authority. Dynasty remains binding constitutional element. Austria governs as cis-Lithuanian entity. Hungary operates as Transleithanian counterpart. Geography reflected in administrative terminology. Institutional borders drawn along River Leda separate parliaments, legislate domestic matters. Budapest and Vienna host political centers. Internal autonomy defines everyday governance. Local identities preserved within legal boundaries. Common ministries coordinate strategic functions. Foreign affairs handled jointly for consistency. Military policy administered under imperial oversight. Finance shared for mutually required expenditures. Emperor acts as constitutional mediator. Royal court balances competing national interests. Ceremonies emphasize political continuity. Symbolism sustains perception of unified state. Bureaucracy adapts to dual administrative needs. Clerks navigate bilingual legal environments. Documents produced in multiple official languages. Administrative flexibility becomes permanent feature. Infrastructure reflects dual territorial logic. Rail networks link capitals and frontiers. Trade corridors strengthen economic interdependence. Mobility supports pan-imperial integration goals. Diplomatic corps represents united foreign position. Ambassadors negotiate with single imperial voice. International treaties apply to both halves. External image remains that of single power. Army remains unified under imperial command. Conscription regulated across both jurisdictions. Officers trained in common military academies. War doctrine sustains shared strategic priorities. Legal scholars debate constitutional nuances. Questions of sovereignty sparked academic fascination. State model challenged traditional monolithic assumptions. Dualism seen as bold institutional experiment. Minority groups watch developments attentively. Some hope for similar autonomy frameworks. Others fear Magyar political dominance. Dual structure triggers new internal hierarchies. Economic sectors benefit from restored stability. Manufacturing expands in Austrian heartlands. Agriculture thrives across Hungarian plains. Complementary economies encourage balanced growth. Imperial family embraces adapted ceremonial protocols. Monarch appears in both capitals regularly. Public rituals affirm dynastic impartiality. Travel becomes political necessity and tradition. By late 19th century model entrenched firmly to states functioning beneath single crown. Dual monarchy defines Habsburg imperial phase. Unique statecraft sustains continental relevance. Austria and Hungary maintain independent administrations. Domestic affairs handled internally without interference. Local parliaments legislate according to autonomy. Governance tailored to regional priorities effectively. Shared foreign policy ensures unified international stance. Emperor directs diplomacy on joint matters. Ambassadors represent both halves of monarchy. Treaties bind entire dual state collectively. Army remains common under imperial command. Conscription applies to citizens across territories. Joint military councils coordinate strategic planning. Defense unified despite domestic administrative division. Budget for army jointly negotiated annually. Both governments contribute to shared expenditures. Financial coordination ensures operational readiness. Economic planning supports defense imperatives uniformly. Naval forces organized under single authority. Fleet deployments managed strategically from Vienna. Coordination avoids duplication and waste. Military efficiency improves with centralized oversight. Common ministries communicate regularly with capitals. Bureaucratic liaison maintains dual coordination. Information flows between Vienna and Budapest. Decision-making integrates dual political structures. Foreign crises handled collectively by monarch. Single-voice projects strength abroad. Alliances negotiated considering both halves. Diplomacy reflects dual monarchy unity. Military parades symbolize combined imperial strength. Soldiers from both regions appear together. Ceremonies emphasize loyalty to crown. Unity reinforced through public spectacle. Training academies standardize officer education. Instruction merges Austrian and Hungarian doctrines. Professionalism instilled in future military leaders. Army cohesion maintained, despite administrative separation. Economic resources pooled for defense purposes. Industrial output supports armaments production. Infrastructure investment benefits both territories. Strategic projects reflect shared priorities. Coordination fosters resilience in external threats. Dual monarchy adapts quickly to crises. Joint foreign policy prevents unilateral mistakes. Empire presents credible deterrence to rivals. Command structure balances dual interests carefully. Hungarian officers receive recognition alongside Austrian peers. Shared hierarchy reinforces imperial legitimacy. Military cooperation strengthens dynastic continuity. Dual system demonstrates pragmatic compromise success. Autonomy preserved without undermining empire. Internal diversity managed through institutional design. Innovation sustains multinational governance effectively. By late 19th century model stable. Common foreign policy ensures geopolitical coherence. Army unites culturally diverse populations. Dual monarchy survives through shared strategic focus. Austro-Hungarian Empire hosts many peoples. Germans concentrated in Austria and cities. Hungarians dominate central plains and elites. Czechs inhabit Bohemia and Moravia regions. Slavs spread across southern provinces. Croats, Slovenes, and Serbs present. Language diversity mirrors ethnic complexity. Italy claims areas in northern provinces. Urban centers reflect mixed populations vividly. Merchants, artisans, and bureaucrats intermingle daily. Cultural exchange occurs in marketplaces. Economic life fosters interethnic cooperation sometimes. Noble families often speak multiple languages. Court etiquette demands linguistic flexibility. Administration accommodates bilingual or trilingual officials. Social mobility requires linguistic competence increasingly. Religious affiliation overlaps ethnic identity. Catholicism dominates Austrians and Hungarians. Orthodoxy prevalent among southern Slavs. Protestant pockets exist in northern and central areas. Immigration influences demographic composition subtly. Workers move from rural regions frequently. Newcomers integrate cautiously into local society. City neighborhoods often segregated by ethnicity. Marriage patterns show occasional interethnic unions. Elite marriages may transcend ethnic boundaries. Commoners tend to marry within group. Cultural assimilation limited, but observable. Festivals celebrate specific ethnic traditions. Folk music, dance, and costumes vary. Cuisine reflects regional and ethnic heritage. Local identities preserved through cultural practices. Military service mixes ethnic groups sometimes. Soldiers learn to cooperate under imperial command. Shared experiences forge limited cohesion. Discipline bridges some social divides. Education policies impact ethnic identity. Schools teach language of dominant region. Curricula sometimes promote imperial or local culture. Children learn history from multiple perspectives. Ethnic populations influence local governance decisions. Mayors and councils often reflect community composition. Minority groups seek representation in administration. Negotiations balance local demands with imperial policy. Urban newspapers publish in multiple languages. Readers access news in preferred tongue. Intellectual debates occur across ethnic boundaries. Literature fosters emerging national consciousness. Festivals and ceremonies showcase multilingual displays. Public rituals balance multiple cultural traditions. Monarchy often mediates competing symbolic claims. Court celebrations carefully represent diverse subjects. Trade networks cross ethnic lines effectively. Merchants cooperate despite linguistic differences. Economic incentives foster limited solidarity. Practicality sometimes outweighs cultural separation. By late 19th century ethnic composition complex. Multiple identities coexist within single imperial framework. Empire strength rests on managed diversity. Tensions quietly simmer beneath surface stability. Languages vary across empire's vast territories. German spoken in administrative and urban centers. Hungarian dominates plains and elite institutions. Czech flourishes in Bohemian towns and schools. Slavic dialects differ among southern communities. Croatian, Slovene, and Serbian widely spoken. Italian persists in Tyrol and coastal regions. Multilingualism common among merchants and artisans. Bilingualism required in borderland communities. Trade and travel demand flexible communication. Officials learn multiple languages for efficiency. Court etiquette enforces linguistic diplomacy strictly. Education influences cultural identity strongly. Schools teach regional language alongside imperial norms. Curricula vary reflecting local and national priorities. Children exposed to multiple linguistic frameworks. Literature develops in distinct languages simultaneously. Poets write in German, Hungarian, Czech, Italian. Novels circulate fostering cultural awareness widely. Folk tales preserve oral traditions regionally. Religious practices reflect linguistic variation. Catholic sermons often conducted in native tongue. Orthodox and Protestant communities maintain separate rituals. Faith reinforces both spiritual and cultural identity. Urban signage reveals multilingual realities clearly. Markets display goods with multiple labels. Government decrees sometimes translated for citizens. Practical considerations acknowledge cultural plurality. Festivals highlight local language and customs. Songs, dances, and plays preserve heritage. Ethnic identity celebrated publicly with pride. Ceremonial occasions mark cultural continuity. Newspapers target specific language groups separately. Editors choose vocabulary for ethnic audiences. Journalism promotes literacy in native tongues. Public discourse shaped by linguistic environment. Theatre performances reflect multilingual cultural trends. Actors perform in dominant regional language. Audiences respond to familiar dialects enthusiastically. Artistic life reinforces linguistic diversity. Migration spreads languages to new settlements. Rural populations absorb urban linguistic influences. Trade corridors facilitate cultural exchange continuously. Cities become centers of linguistic mixture. Legal system accommodates regional languages selectively. Courts interpret local laws with translators. Official documentation recognizes multiple tongues. Administration adapts to linguistic realities pragmatically. Nationalist writers emphasize native language importance. Language becomes symbol of ethnic pride. Cultural organizations defend linguistic heritage. Identity strongly tied to mother tongue. By late 19th century, diversity entrenched. Linguistic complexity challenges imperial cohesion constantly. Culture mirrors empire's multi-ethnic structure. Diversity celebrated, but sometimes fuels tension. Nationalist movements emerge across empire strongly. Czechs demand cultural and political recognition. Hungarians push for expanded autonomy. Slavs advocate local self-governance and rights. Italian irredentists seek northern territorial claims. Language and heritage fuel nationalist ambitions. Poets, writers, and intellectuals inspire citizens. Art becomes vehicle for national expression. Newspapers publish ideas of ethnic pride. Pamphlets circulate in urban centers widely. Schools teach national history and language. Students embrace cultural awareness enthusiastically. Political clubs organize protests and petitions. Delegates lobby parliaments for constitutional reforms. Demands framed as historic rights restoration. Strategies rely on legal and peaceful methods. Folk movements revive local traditions actively. Music, dance, and costume emphasize heritage. Festivals reinforce collective memory publicly. Cultural preservation strengthens nationalist sentiment. Workers join movements for ethnic recognition. Industrial cities see ethnic solidarity grow. Trade unions occasionally adopt nationalist agendas. Labor intersects with cultural activism occasionally. Youth movements spread nationalist ideology broadly. Student associations hold meetings and debates. Universities become centers of political consciousness. Education plays role in identity formation. Empire responds with cautious concessions selectively. Vienna negotiates to avoid outright rebellion. Minor reforms attempt to appease local elites. Central authority balances pressure from multiple groups. Rival nationalities sometimes compete for influence. Slavic factions conflict over regional priorities. Hungarian elites assert dominance in joint parliament. Ethnic tension increases within political assemblies. Nationalist movements gain momentum. The international examples. Italy and Germany unify successfully previously. Success inspires minorities within Habsburg domains. Ideas of self-determination spread rapidly. By late 19th century, nationalism entrenched. Imperial administration faces persistent ideological challenge. Unity maintained, but under constant internal strain. Movement dynamics shape empire's political evolution. Central authority struggles to maintain control. Vienna imposes laws on diverse regions. Officials face resistance from ethnic elites. Policies often clash with local traditions. Hungarian demands challenge imperial decision-making. Budapest asserts influence over internal matters. Dual monarchy complicates chain of command. Autonomy creates legal and political friction. Czech representatives push for language rights. Schools, courts, and publications under debate. Local laws sometimes override imperial regulations. Central policies met with negotiated resistance. Slavic minorities feel neglected and marginalized. Demands for cultural recognition increase steadily. National consciousness fuels insistence on reforms. Identity becomes rallying point for activism. Italian-speaking regions seek administrative concessions. Local governance challenges centralized authority. Cultural celebrations become subtle political statements. Symbols of loyalty contested publicly and privately. Military service tests loyalty across ethnic groups. Drafted soldiers from multiple nationalities coexist uneasily. Language barriers complicate coordination and instruction. Army becomes microcosm of imperial tension. Bureaucracy strained by multilingual administration. Officials spend resources mediating local disputes. Policy implementation slowed by competing claims. Efficiency undermined by political sensitivities constantly. Economic policies provoke ethnic grievances sometimes. Taxation and resource allocation spark unrest. Local elites negotiate special exemptions frequently. Regional inequities intensify underlying tensions. Press coverage amplifies conflicts openly. Newspapers report disputes between ethnic groups. Public opinion fuels political polarization. Media becomes arena for cultural competition. Monarchy seeks compromise to preserve unity. Ceremonial gestures and symbolic acts deployed. Royal interventions mediate ethnic disputes diplomatically. Central authority balances power carefully. Minor revolts occasionally break out briefly. Rural populations protest central mandates occasionally. Local uprisings highlight fragility of control. Authority reinforced after negotiation or suppression. By late 19th century, tension persistent. Empire survives through cautious political management. Central authority adapts, but cannot fully satisfy. Ethnic aspirations remain potent internal pressure. Empire strives to preserve fragile cohesion. Diverse populations demand recognition and respect. Central authority balances competing national interests. Unity threatened by rising internal pressures. Dual monarchy system tests imperial flexibility. Shared foreign policy binds divided administrations. Army enforces central authority periodically. Diplomacy becomes essential for internal stability. Economic disparities spark regional dissatisfaction. Industrial regions gain wealth rapidly. Rural provinces remain relatively underdeveloped. Inequalities fuel nationalist grievances subtly. Education reinforces ethnic consciousness increasingly. Schools teach language and history separately. Cultural identity strengthens political activism. Younger generations embrace nationalist ideals. Political parties form along ethnic lines. Parliament debates often become identity contests. Legislation requires delicate compromise constantly. Policy making slowed by diverse competing priorities. Monarchy intervenes with ceremonial gestures frequently. Symbolism reassures subjects of shared loyalty. Public rituals emphasize dynastic continuity. Royal tour promote visibility and unity. Military service provides temporary cohesion. Shared training fosters limited solidarity. Conscription unites soldiers across ethnic divides. Discipline reinforces obedience to emperor's authority. Media spreads nationalist ideas rapidly. Newspapers highlight grievances and demands. Intellectual movements fuel public debate. Culture becomes arena of political struggle. Minor uprisings occasionally test loyalty. Rebellions remind government of internal vulnerabilities. Suppression combined with concessions maintains temporary stability. Empire survives, but unity remains precarious. Foreign powers monitor internal dynamics closely. Rival states seek influence among minorities. External pressure complicates domestic governance. Diplomatic balance critical to imperial survival. Administrators experiment with reforms cautiously. Autonomy granted selectively to appease populations. Legal frameworks adapted for compromise. Innovation necessary to sustain empire longevity. By late 19th century cohesion fragile. Unity maintained through compromise and oversight. Empire survives through constant negotiation. Habsburg state persists amid diversity pressures. Emperor reigns over Austria and Hungary. Monarch embodies both political and symbolic authority. Crown links dual administrations under one ruler. Dynasty symbolizes unity across divided territories. Imperial decisions affect both state halves. Vienna and Budapest recognize shared sovereignty. Royal presence mediates between competing elites. Emperor represents continuity of dynastic legitimacy. Public ceremonies display dual monarchy unity. Coronation rituals highlight shared political structure. Court protocol balances Austrian and Hungarian traditions. Royal appearances reinforce loyalty among subjects. Emperor appoints ministers in both governments. Selection requires balancing political factions carefully. Appointments acknowledge ethnic and regional sensitivities. Authority exercised within constitutional limitations strictly. Military command rests under imperial oversight. Army loyalty directly linked to emperor. Soldiers from both regions follow single chain. Emperor coordinates defense and foreign policy. Legislation sanctioned through royal approval. Parliaments submit laws for imperial confirmation. Monarch ensures coherence between separate legal systems. Royal veto functions as unifying instrument. Diplomatic affairs centralized under emperor's direction. Ambassadors present unified dual monarchy stance. Treaties negotiated with monarch's authority. Foreign policy reflects dual interests jointly. Emperor mediates internal disputes periodically. Royal interventions prevent conflicts from escalating. Symbolic authority complements legal and political power. Dynasty maintains perception of impartial governance. Monarch embodies historical legitimacy of Habsburg line. Ceremony emphasizes continuity across centuries. Public loyalty cultivated through ritual and tradition. Dynastic authority stabilizes divided political entities. Finance, military, and diplomacy coordinate under emperor. Shared responsibilities ensure dual monarchy survival. Centralized oversight mitigates conflicting regional interests. Imperial authority provides cohesion amidst diversity. By late 19th century emperor influential. Symbolic presence ensures stability and respect. Monarch remains ultimate authority across empire. Dual monarchy functions under single crown. Austria maintains Cisleithanian parliament independently. Vienna governs internal laws and policies. Hungary operates Trans-Lithuanian legislature separately. Budapest manages domestic political and administrative affairs. Each parliament enacts regional legislation autonomously. Local governments handle taxation and infrastructure. Lawmakers debate policies reflecting ethnic composition. Decisions tailored to regional social conditions. Ministries staffed by separate bureaucrats. Officials trained in distinct administrative systems. Documentation and records maintained independently. Dual structure ensures local governance efficiency. Parliament sessions reflect regional priorities clearly. Cultural, economic, and political needs considered. Hungarian Diet asserts autonomy within monarchy. Viennese Imperial Council manages Austrian concerns. Legislation sometimes overlaps, but rarely conflicts. Coordination required for foreign policy matters. Internal administration remains primarily regional. Autonomy preserved through separate legal frameworks. Ethnic minorities represented in regional parliaments. Czechs, Slovaks, and Italians hold seats. Local voices influence policy decisions locally. Minority interests balanced within dual structure. Budgeting and finance divided between governments. Revenue collection managed according to territory. Shared contributions coordinated for army, diplomacy. Dual fiscal system reflects political compromise. Parliamentary debates shape local public opinion. Urban populations engage in political discussion. Press reports influence legislative priorities actively. Civic participation increases regional awareness. Laws often tailored to regional language use. Education, judiciary, and official documents bilingual. Policies reflect linguistic and cultural diversity. Administration adapts to multi-ethnic realities constantly. Royal assent required for major legislation. Emperor oversees compliance with dual constitution. Parliamentary independence remains balanced with monarch's authority. System stabilizes complex political environments effectively. By late 19th century dual administration entrenched. Separate parliaments maintain autonomy under monarchy. Local governance remains functional and region-specific. Dual legislative system sustains imperial structure. Bureaucracy forms backbone of imperial governance. Officials implement laws across multiple regions. Administrative network spans urban and rural areas. Civil service ensures order and stability. Departments manage taxation and public finances. Revenue collected for shared army and diplomacy. Expenditures monitored through detailed reporting systems. Dual fiscal framework requires precise coordination. Officials maintain records in multiple languages. Documentation reflects ethnic and regional diversity. Legal rulings translated for administrative clarity. Correspondence ensures communication across capitals efficiently. Provincial administrators handle local disputes effectively. Mayors and councils coordinate daily affairs. Public services delivered according to local needs. Government maintains legitimacy through competent administration. Education overseen by regional bureaucracies separately. Schools teach national and imperial curricula. Officials supervise teachers and curricular standards. Education used to promote stability and identity. Military bureaucracy manages conscription and logistics. Recruitment organized across ethnic communities. Armies deployed according to dual strategic priorities. Record keeping essential for operational coordination. Trade and commerce regulated by administrative offices. Licenses, tariffs, and market inspections maintained. Officials enforce rules across diverse populations. Economic order ensures imperial revenue sustainability. Legal bureaucracy standardizes judicial procedures. Courts staffed by trained civil servants. Case files maintained systematically throughout regions. Law applied consistently despite local variation. Postal and communication services coordinated centrally. Messages carried efficiently between Vienna and Budapest. Officials ensure bureaucratic networks function smoothly. Coordination supports both domestic and foreign policies. Healthcare and social services monitored by bureaucrats. Hospitals regulated according to administrative guidelines. Public welfare programs managed regionally. State intervenes to maintain population health. By late 19th century, bureaucracy essential. Empire functions largely through administrative competence. Professional civil service sustains complex dual structure. Officials mediate between monarchy and ethnically diverse populations. Political reforms introduced cautiously by monarchy. Changes aim to appease growing social pressures. Limited suffrage granted in urban areas. Rural populations largely excluded from voting. Industrialization fuels demands for labor representation. Workers seek rights and legal protections. Trade unions emerge in major cities. Strikes occasionally disrupt urban economic stability. Education reforms expand access gradually. Secondary schools reach wider populations slowly. Curricula adjusted to include practical skills. Social mobility influenced by educational opportunities. Press and public debate influence political awareness. Newspapers report on parliamentary proceedings widely. Intellectuals advocate constitutional reform and accountability. Ideas circulate among urban middle classes. Local municipalities experiment with limited reforms. City councils gain authority over services. Infrastructure and sanitation improve incrementally. Public engagement increases slowly over decades. Ethnic minorities push for cultural recognition. Schools and administration adapt gradually to languages. Minor concessions granted in governance structures. Changes respond to nationalist pressures cautiously. Women's groups begin limited political organizing. Early advocacy for education and civic rights. Social reform movements challenge traditional norms. Public discourse slowly incorporates broader perspectives. Judicial reforms aim to modernize legal system. Procedures standardized across multiple regions. Civil and criminal codes updated selectively. Reform cautious to avoid political backlash. Reforms often compromise between old and new. Traditional elites retain significant authority. Change incremental rather than revolutionary. Dual monarchy adapts without losing control. Industrial and urban growth pressure state adaptation. New social classes demand representation politically. Monarchy balances reform with maintaining elite support. Stability prioritized over radical social change. By late 19th century, reforms partial. Empire responds, but retains conservative foundations. Social change visible yet limited structurally. Political modernization constrained by imperial caution. Nationalism challenges cohesion across dual monarchy. Ethnic groups demand cultural and political rights. Bureaucracy struggles to manage complex populations. Administrative inefficiency emerges under diverse pressures. Hungarian and Austrian elites pursue separate agendas. Regional parliaments assert autonomy strongly. Central government often forced to negotiate. Dual structure complicates straightforward decision-making. Minority populations express dissatisfaction regularly. Czechs, Slavs, and Italians seek influence. Language, education, and legal rights contested. Government constantly mediates between competing interests. Civil servants overburdened by administrative tasks. Record keeping and coordination slow policy implementation. Officials navigate overlapping jurisdictions daily. Dual bureaucracy creates redundancies and confusion. Nationalist movements exploit legal and political gaps. Protests, petitions, and strikes disrupt administration. Local elites pressure for concessions frequently. Monarchy mediates to prevent outright rebellion. Infrastructure projects delayed by bureaucratic complexity. Funding allocation complicated by regional autonomy. Economic development uneven across empire. Modernization slowed despite growing social demand. Military coordination challenged by ethnic diversity. Language barriers affect communication and training. Soldiers sometimes questioned loyalty to central authority. Discipline maintained through strict hierarchical enforcement. Press and intellectual movements amplify tensions publicly. Newspapers highlight grievances, fueling political activism. Education spreads nationalist awareness among youth. Public opinion increasingly influences governance decisions. Central authority responds cautiously to avoid crises. Compromise employed to balance multiple demands. Symbolic gestures reassure populations periodically. Legal frameworks adapted for pragmatic governance. By late 19th century, strain persistent. Bureaucracy essential, but tested continually. Nationalism challenges imperial unity repeatedly. Governance succeeds through careful negotiation and compromise. Dual monarchy survives but remains fragile. Stability dependent on skilled administration. Ethnic diversity requires constant attention. Empire endures under ongoing internal tension. Bohemia emerges as industrial powerhouse quickly. Textiles, glass, and machinery drive growth. Factories employ urban populations increasingly. Urban workforce expands dramatically across towns. Austrian cities embrace technological innovation actively. Steam engines power manufacturing industries. Metalworking and chemical production expand rapidly. Industrial entrepreneurs invest in infrastructure continuously. Urbanization accompanies industrial development visibly. Workers migrate from rural countryside regions. Housing and urban services struggle to keep pace. Social challenges rise alongside economic prosperity. Investment flows from domestic and foreign sources. Banks fund industrial expansion aggressively. Joint stock companies emerge in major sectors. Capital markets facilitate rapid modernization projects. Skilled labor concentrated in manufacturing hubs. Apprenticeships train young artisans systematically. Technical education promoted to support growth. Engineering schools supply trained workforce efficiently. Urban middle class expands economically. Merchants, managers, and professionals benefit significantly. Consumer markets grow within cities steadily. Commercial services diversify and modernize rapidly. Railways transport goods and raw materials efficiently. Steamships and canals supplement transport infrastructure. Industrial supply chains expand beyond local regions. Bohemia and Austria connected to wider markets. Export industries develop across textile and metal sectors. Regional products reach European and global buyers. Trade networks strengthen economic position internationally. Industrial output drives imperial revenue effectively. Labor conditions often harsh in factories. Long hours and low wages common. Workers organize unions occasionally for protection. Strikes and protests highlight social challenges. Technological innovation spreads among competing factories. Efficiency and mechanization improve productivity consistently. Entrepreneurs adopt modern production methods quickly. Competition stimulates continual industrial improvement. By late 19th century, Bohemia and Austria. Industrialization transforms society and economy profoundly. Cities dominate political and cultural influence. Economic power increasingly concentrated in urban centers. Hungary remains largely agrarian and traditional. Vast plains support crop and livestock production. Peasants farm inherited land for livelihood. Rural communities structured around village hierarchies. Cereal crops dominate the fertile plains. Wheat, corn, and barley cultivated extensively. Livestock farming supplements grain-based economy. Food supplies feed both local and urban markets. Large estates controlled by Hungarian nobility. Landowners extract rents from tenant farmers. Feudal-like obligations persist into late 19th century. Social hierarchy reinforces agricultural dominance. Traditional farming methods slow productivity improvements. Manual labor remains primary means of cultivation. Mechanization limited to wealthier estates only. Innovation adopted gradually across countryside. Local markets dominate trade and commerce. goods exchanged regionally rather than nationally. Small towns serve as agricultural distribution hubs. Villages rely on periodic fairs and markets. Rural society preserves ethnic and cultural traditions. Language, customs, and festivals maintained locally. Church and community central to daily life. Cultural identity rooted in land and labor. Peasant revolts occasionally challenge local landlords. Economic hardship exacerbates social tensions. Minor reforms attempt to alleviate grievances. Authority preserved through limited concessions. Agricultural output supports industrial centers indirectly. Food transported to urban populations increasingly. Stable rural production underpins industrial workforce. Economic interdependence links countryside and cities. Government invests minimally in rural infrastructure. Roads, canals, and storage facilities scarce. Transport inefficiencies slow trade and modernization. Connectivity improves gradually with railway expansion. By late 19th century, agriculture dominant. Rural areas retain traditional social structure. Urban industrialization contrasts sharply with countryside. Economic disparities deepen between regions. Hungary's agricultural wealth strengthens nobility's influence. Political power reinforced through land ownership. Rural economy shapes cultural and social life. Peasant labor remains backbone of imperial food supply. Railways transform transportation across empire rapidly. Tracks connect industrial centers and agricultural regions. Goods transported efficiently between cities and towns. Infrastructure expansion fuels economic integration significantly. Vienna and Budapest become central railway hubs. Lines radiate outward to surrounding provinces. Passenger travel increases with industrial and urban growth. Urbanization accelerated by improved mobility networks. Investment in railroads supported by state and private. Banks finance construction and maintenance projects. Joint stock companies manage operations strategically. Capital flows enable large-scale engineering works. Bridges, tunnels, and stations constructed extensively. Engineering innovation drives ambitious infrastructural projects. Construction labor employs thousands across regions. Modern technology supports transportation revolution continuously. Canals complement railways in transporting bulk goods. Rivers navigable with improved locks and ports. Trade efficiency rises across empire's interior. Infrastructure underpins industrial and commercial development. Urban infrastructure upgrades accompany transport expansion. Water supply, roads, and street networks improved. Electric trams emerge in key cities. Urban planning adapts to growing populations. Railways integrate diverse economic zones efficiently. Bohemia's factories export products widely. Hungarian plains supply food to industrial cities. Transportation links reduce regional isolation gradually. Military logistics benefit from rail network. Troop movement faster across dual monarchy territories. Strategic mobility enhances imperial defense capabilities. Infrastructure critical for both civil and military needs. By late 19th century, railway density remarkable. Empire connected more closely than ever before. Integration supports economic, military, and social growth. Infrastructure becomes symbol of modernization and progress. Vienna emerges as empire's economic powerhouse. Banks, factories, and trade concentrate there. Urban population grows steadily with industry. Cultural and commercial influence radiates outward. Budapest develops rapidly under Hungarian autonomy. Financial institutions manage regional and imperial funds. Markets expand to serve urban and rural areas. Industrial and service sectors flourish simultaneously. Both cities attract skilled laborers and professionals. Migration increases from surrounding rural provinces. Housing and infrastructure expand to accommodate workforce. Urban planning becomes increasingly important for growth. Commercial districts thrive with retail and trade. Wholesale markets handle goods across regions. Artisans, merchants, and entrepreneurs prosper economically. Economic activity diversifies beyond traditional industries. Stock exchanges facilitate investment and capital allocation. Banks fund industrial, transport, and infrastructure projects. Entrepreneurs leverage financial networks for expansion. Urban economies drive imperial modernization efforts. Cultural institutions support economic development indirectly. Universities train skilled bureaucrats and professionals. Technical schools supply engineers for industry. Innovation promoted through educational and professional networks. Transportation links concentrate economic activity in cities. Railways connect Vienna and Budapest efficiently. Ports, stations, and warehouses facilitate trade. Urban hubs become nodes of national economy. Financial and industrial decision-making centralized in capitals. Policies formulated to stimulate regional economic growth. Government offices coordinate fiscal and trade matters. Economic strategy implemented from dual monarchy centers. Urban population consumes both local and imported goods. Consumer culture develops alongside industrial expansion. Commercial advertising spreads awareness and demand. Retail sector supports modern urban lifestyle. By late 19th century cities dominant, Vienna and Budapest drive dual monarchy economy. Urban prosperity contrasts sharply with rural regions. Economic influence tied directly to administrative power. Industrial regions advance faster than rural areas. Bohemia and Austria develop modern factories. Hungarian plains remain agrarian and traditional. Economic disparity between regions becomes pronounced. Urban centers grow wealthy and influential. Rural communities lack infrastructure and investment. Standard of living varies across empire significantly. Access to education and services unevenly distributed. Railway expansion benefits industrial hubs primarily. Remote agricultural regions remain poorly connected. Transportation infrastructure reinforces regional economic gaps. Integration uneven despite technical advancements. Industrial workers gain social mobility gradually. Rural peasants face limited opportunities locally. Income and wealth concentrated in cities. Social stratification intensified by economic disparity. Government policies struggle to equalize development. Investments favor urban modernization projects. Rural areas receive limited funding selectively. Central planning constrained by dual monarchy structure. Nationalist sentiments amplified by regional inequality. Ethnic tensions worsened in underdeveloped territories. Economic frustration fuels political activism slowly. Discontent grows in less developed provinces. Urban migration increases pressures on cities. Rural populations move seeking work opportunities. Housing and services strained in industrial areas. Cities adapt gradually to rapid growth. Commercial hubs influence regional markets disproportionately. Small towns remain economically dependent. Wealth flows toward industrialized zones mainly. Rural economies lag behind growing urban centers. By late 19th century imbalance entrenched. Economic inequality reinforces social and political divisions. Empire remains prosperous, yet internally fragmented. Uneven development shapes future national tensions. Vienna becomes hub of European culture. Orchestras perform in grand concert halls. Opera thrives as elite and public entertainment. Symphonies attract audiences from across continent. Philosophical debates flourish in university settings. Scholars discuss ethics, politics, and society. Ideas circulate through lectures and publications. Intellectual life vibrant in cafes and salons. Visual arts grow with unique local styles. Painting and sculpture reflect contemporary trends. Exhibitions display innovative techniques and subjects. Artistic innovation celebrated by critics and patrons. Musical composition reaches new heights. Composers experiment with harmony and structure. Concerts promote creativity and public engagement. Vienna recognized globally as musical capital. Architectural projects transform cities' appearance dramatically. Historic buildings restored, new designs implemented. Public spaces adorned with artistic sculptures. Cityscape reflects imperial sophistication and ambition. Intellectual circles encourage interdisciplinary collaboration. Philosophers, musicians, and artists interact frequently. Cross-pollination of ideas fosters creativity. Urban life nourishes scholarly and artistic output. Patrons support emerging talent financially. Royal and noble sponsorship sustains cultural institutions. Grants fund public concerts, exhibitions, and publications. Imperial funding reinforces Vienna's artistic dominance. Cultural festivals attract international attention regularly. Music, theatre, and art combined in celebrations. Events enhance cities' prestige and influence. Vienna draws students, artists, and intellectuals. By late 19th century, Vienna firmly established. Center of music, philosophy, and visual arts. Cultural reputation attracts talents and audiences. City shapes broader European intellectual landscape. Mozart revolutionizes music with timeless compositions. Operas captivate audiences with emotional depth. Symphonies performed across European concert halls. Influence persists centuries beyond his lifetime. Freud develops revolutionary theories of mind. Psychoanalysis challenges conventional understandings of behavior. Ideas spread among medical and intellectual circles. Patients and scholars debate unconscious motivations. Klimt transforms visual art with decorative style. Paintings blend symbolism, eroticism, and pattern. Golden phases highlight innovation and technique. Influence seen in European and global modernism. Artists, musicians, and thinkers interact closely. Cross-disciplinary exchange nurtures creativity continually. Vienna becomes incubator for intellectual exploration. Ideas flourish in salons, universities, and cafes. Mozart's compositions inspire generations of musicians. Performance and interpretation sustain cultural legacy. Viennese music culture thrives on historic tradition. Public concerts maintain elite and popular appeal. Freud's theories provoke both admiration and controversy. Psychology emerges as respected academic discipline. Vienna becomes hub for research and discussion. New methods influence therapy, literature, and education. Klimt's work challenges academic artistic norms. Exhibitions provoke discussion among critics and patrons. Art circles debate aesthetics and symbolism openly. Innovators shape modernist artistic movements across Europe. Patrons support these figures generously. Royal and bourgeois sponsorship sustains creativity. Funding ensures music, research, and art flourish. Imperial attention enhances reputation and resources. Cultural production integrates tradition with innovation. Artists blend historic techniques with modern ideas. Intellectual circles synthesize art, music, and philosophy. Vienna becomes symbol of European enlightenment. Legacy of these figures shapes city identity. Mozart, Freud, Klimt exemplify Vienna's creativity. Contributions inspire local and international audiences. City's cultural life thrives, despite political challenges. By late 19th century influence undeniable. Vienna recognized globally for artistic brilliance. Cultural prestige attracts students and intellectuals. Figures define modern European intellectual and artistic landscape. Monarchy invests in schools and universities. Imperial funding supports research and academic institutions. Scientific exploration encouraged across multiple disciplines. Education prioritized to modernize empire effectively. Universities in Vienna attract domestic and foreign students. Professors teach law, medicine, and philosophy. Research laboratories develop experimental methods. Scholarship promotes innovation and intellectual growth. Royal patronage funds scientific expeditions abroad. Natural sciences benefit from financial support. Geography, biology, and physics advance steadily. Imperial endorsement enhances legitimacy of discoveries. Technical schools train engineers and administrators. Industrial growth requires trained workforce continually. Education adapts to meet economic needs. Applied sciences bridge theory and practical industry. Medical research receives significant support from Crown. Hospitals and clinics equipped with modern instruments. Health studies improve urban and rural conditions. Public hygiene and disease prevention emphasized systematically. Astronomy and physics thrive under imperial attention. Observatories maintained with government funding. Scholars exchange findings across European networks. Empire participates in global scientific community actively. Scholarships awarded to talented but poor students. Access to higher education extended selectively. Meritocracy encouraged in academic and professional fields. Society benefits from educated civil and scientific elites. Imperial libraries expand collections for research. Manuscripts, books, and archives systematically preserved. Intellectual resources accessible to scholars and students. Knowledge accumulation supports innovation and administration. Academies honor achievements in arts and sciences. Awards stimulate creativity and discovery among youth. Scientists and inventors gain recognition nationally. Public celebrations reinforce cultural and scientific value. Patronage ensures continuity of intellectual tradition. Funding reduces reliance on private sponsorship. State supports interdisciplinary collaboration between faculties. Empire shapes scholarly pursuits through deliberate guidance. By late 19th century education flourishing. Science integrated into imperial modernization programs. Patronage strengthens Vienna as intellectual capital. Empire gains prestige from academic and scientific achievements. Vienna's coffeehouses become centers of discussion. Writers, artists, and philosophers gather daily. Ideas exchanged freely across social boundaries. Debates flourish over politics, art, and science. Tables crowded with notebooks and newspapers. Students and scholars analyze current events. Literature, music, and philosophy topics dominate. Intellectual life thrives within cafe culture. Journalists publish reports inspired by conversations. Editorials shaped by cafe debates regularly. News spreads quickly through urban coffeehouse networks. Public opinion influenced by lively discussions. Artists sketch and paint in coffeehouse corners. Performances and readings supplement visual culture. Creativity nurtured through collaborative and informal gatherings. Cafes support experimentation and intellectual networking. Businessmen and politicians meet discreetly there. Political strategies discussed over coffee cups. Ideas influence policy and social reform indirectly. Cafes function as hubs for elite and commoners. Poets and writers critique each other's work. Literary salons extend conversations beyond cafes. Movements and schools of thought incubated quietly. Informal mentoring occurs between generations of thinkers. Music enthusiasts share compositions and critiques. Musicians perform small recitals in intimate settings. Cultural dialogue bridges classical and contemporary styles. Viennese cafes reinforce cities' artistic reputation. Immigrant and minority communities participate actively. Multilingual conversations reflect empire's diversity. Cultural exchange strengthens social and intellectual cohesion. Cafes act as microcosms of urban life. By late 19th century coffeehouse is iconic. Centers for discussion, debate, and creativity. Intellectual exchange contributes to Vienna's prestige. Urban culture sustained through cafe networks consistently. Vienna's culture flourishes despite political tensions. Concerts, theaters, and galleries remain lively. Caf debates continue amidst social uncertainty. Artistic output hides underlying imperial fragility. Intellectual life thrives even with unrest. Scholars discuss philosophy, science, and society. Political disagreements often ignored in salons. Culture distracts from ethnic and administrative conflicts. Music celebrated widely across urban population. Operas and symphonies attract enthusiastic audiences. Art exhibitions draw visitors from throughout empire. Entertainment sustains public morale and civic identity. Patrons fund artists despite economic fluctuations. Royal and noble sponsorship supports cultural institutions. Artists continue work regardless of political challenges. Creative activity persists in challenging environments. Public events reinforce social cohesion temporarily. Festivals, concerts, and exhibitions maintain visibility. City appears stable and prosperous externally. Vibrancy conceals debates over nationalist ambitions. Newspapers and journals cover cultural achievements. Literary criticism and art reviews flourish. Intellectual discourse maintains prestige and engagement. Public attention directed toward creative accomplishments. Political instability grows beneath urban surface. Ethnic tensions, nationalist movements, and bureaucracy strain empire. Elites manage delicate balance cautiously. Dual monarchy survives through careful negotiation. Cultural life masks systemic weaknesses effectively. Music, art, and literature distract from crises. Vienna projects image of harmony and refinement. External observers see thriving, unified imperial capital. By late 19th century, dual reality evident. Vibrant culture coexists with political fragility. Art and intellect flourish despite social strain. Empire projects stability while facing internal challenges. Imperial army massive in size and structure. Recruitment covers Austria and Hungarian territories. Millions serve in active and reserve units. Numbers impressive, but organization lacks modernization. Equipment often obsolete compared to European rivals. Rifles, artillery, and uniforms outdated gradually. Training methods remain traditional and rigid. Tactics rely on 19th century doctrines primarily. Officers drawn from aristocracy and elite families. Command structure hierarchical and sometimes inefficient. Promotion influenced by lineage rather than skill. Strategic planning limited by outdated military education. Soldiers face harsh conditions during service. Long marches, poor supplies, and discipline strict. Morale occasionally suffers under rigid hierarchy. Desertion and discontent present but limited. Army reorganized partially after Prussian defeat. Modernization initiatives slowly introduced by reformers. Railways improve troop mobility slightly. Training academies adopt newer methods selectively. Reserve forces lack adequate equipment and preparation. Rapid mobilization hindered by bureaucratic delays. Coordination between Austrian and Hungarian units challenging. Dual monarchy complicates centralized military control. Artillery and cavalry units retain outdated techniques. Infantry tactics lag behind technological advances. Navy underdeveloped relative to European powers. Empire's military capacity overstated by internal assessments. Military traditions emphasize honor and ceremony. Parades reinforce loyalty to emperor publicly. Discipline and symbolism often prioritized over efficiency. Officer corps resistant to rapid modernization. By early 20th century, army still large. Modernization incomplete despite reform efforts. Strength lies in numbers, not technology. Preparedness limited for modern continental warfare. Austria-Hungary competes with Russia for influence. Balkans become primary area of contention. Eastern Europe sees shifting alliances frequently. Territorial ambitions clash between imperial powers repeatedly. Ottoman Empire weakening, leaving power vacuum. Austria seeks to expand southeast influence. Russia supports Slavic nations and Orthodox populations. Diplomatic tensions rise over Balkan territories constantly. Military posturing occurs along borders with neighbors. Armies mobilized in response to perceived threats. Fortifications built to deter potential invasions. Border garrisons reinforced despite outdated equipment. Economic and strategic interests influence rivalry. Trade routes, rivers, and ports contested. Access to Adriatic and Danube critical. Control of resources fuels diplomatic competition. Alliances fluctuate according to international circumstances. Germany sometimes supports Austria's regional ambitions. Russia pursues pan-Slavic policies aggressively. Ottomans attempt to retain declining authority. Balkan nationalist movements exploited by rival powers. Ethnic groups receive foreign support tactically. Political instability increases across southeastern Europe. Dual monarchy faces constant diplomatic challenges. Treaties negotiated to prevent open conflict temporarily. Congresses and conferences attempt to resolve disputes. Diplomatic maneuvering essential to maintain balance. Strategy combines negotiation with military preparedness. By early 20th century tensions persistent. Austria-Hungary entangled in Balkan rivalries. Competition with Russia and Ottoman Empire ongoing. Foreign policy dominated by strategic caution. Military readiness complicated by outdated army. Diplomacy becomes vital to secure imperial interests. Alliances necessary to preserve dual monarchy. Rivalries define empire's Eastern European strategy. Austria-Hungary increases political involvement in Balkans. Economic and strategic interests drive expansion. Influence extends over small Slavic states. Diplomatic missions secure commercial and territorial advantages. Serbia, Montenegro, and Bosnia monitored closely. Ethnic tensions exploited to maintain control. Local leaders co-opted into imperial administration. Dual monarchy shapes Balkan political landscape subtly. Infrastructure projects enhance imperial presence regionally. Railways, telegraphs, and roads connect key towns. Modernization facilitates economic integration. Military garrisons stationed to assert authority. Cultural influence spreads through schools and institutions. Language and education policies reinforce imperial prestige. Religious affiliation leveraged in political strategy. Churches often aligned with Austrian administration. Rival powers watch dual monarchies' activities cautiously. Russia claims influence over Slavic populations. Ottomans struggle to maintain sovereignty. Empire balances diplomacy with military deterrence. Nationalist movements occasionally resist imperial oversight. Local uprisings suppressed carefully to avoid escalation. Political pressure applied through alliances and treaties. Ethnic loyalty manipulated to maintain stability. Trade agreements promote Austrian and Hungarian goods. Ports and river routes facilitate economic control. Investment in industry and agriculture strengthens influence. Local markets increasingly dependent on imperial support. By early 20th century influence entrenched. Austria-Hungary dominates regional politics partially. Dual monarchy seen as Balkan power broker. Strategic position enhances empire's continental importance. Austria-Hungary increases political involvement in Balkans. Economic and strategic interests drive expansion. Influence extends over small Slavic states. Diplomatic missions secure commercial and territorial advantages. Serbia, Montenegro, and Bosnia monitored closely. Ethnic tensions exploited to maintain control. Local leaders co-opted into imperial administration. Dual monarchy shapes Balkan political landscape subtly. Infrastructure projects enhance imperial presence regionally. Railways, telegraphs, and roads connect key towns. Modernization facilitates economic integration. Military garrisons stationed to assert authority. Cultural influence spreads through schools and institutions. Language and education policies reinforce imperial prestige. Religious affiliation leveraged in political strategy. Churches often aligned with Austrian administration. Rival powers watch dual monarchies' activities cautiously. Russia claims influence over Slavic populations. Ottomans struggle to maintain sovereignty. Empire balances diplomacy with military deterrence. Nationalist movements occasionally resist imperial oversight. Local uprisings suppressed carefully to avoid escalation. Political pressure applied through alliances and treaties. Ethnic loyalty manipulated to maintain stability. Trade agreements promote Austrian and Hungarian goods. Ports and river routes facilitate economic control. Investment in industry and agriculture strengthens influence. Local markets increasingly dependent on imperial support. By early 20th century, influence entrenched. Austria-Hungary dominates regional politics partially. Dual monarchy seen as Balkan power broker. Strategic position enhances empire's continental importance. Austria-Hungary becomes deeply involved in continental diplomacy. Alliances shape foreign policy and military strategy. Dual monarchy participates in complex European balance. Decisions influenced by Germany and neighboring powers. Tensions rise with rising nationalism in Balkan states. Serbia and Russia challenge imperial authority directly. Ethnic conflicts spill into international politics frequently. Diplomacy becomes essential to prevent wider wars. Imperial ministers negotiate treaties with multiple powers. Conferences attempt to manage disputes peacefully. Secret agreements made to secure strategic interests. Dual monarchy navigates alliances carefully to maintain influence. Military planning intertwined with diplomatic commitments. Army modernization linked to strategic positioning. Mobilization plans designed in conjunction with allies. Preparation for potential continental conflicts ongoing consistently. European rivalries intensified by imperial ambitions. Territorial disputes amplify tensions with neighboring states. Austria-Hungary entangled in broader geopolitical calculations. Policy must balance internal and external pressures. Colonial and economic interests influence foreign decisions. Trade agreements reflect continental and regional strategy. Empire seeks to protect markets and resources abroad. Diplomacy integrates economic and military considerations simultaneously. By early 20th century, entanglement deep. European alliances rigidly defined, conflict likely. Imperial decisions increasingly constrained by international obligations. Dual monarchy faces limited strategic autonomy. Internal politics complicated by foreign policy commitments. Nationalist aspirations clash with alliance obligations. Domestic reforms delayed by external crises. Empire survives, but under constant diplomatic strain. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to throne. He travels to Sarajevo in June. Political tensions high in Bosnia region. Nationalist groups oppose imperial authority actively. Gavrilo Princip targets Archduke and wife. Assassination occurs during public motorcade procession. Attack sparks immediate chaos and outrage. Security failures expose imperial vulnerability visibly. Franz Ferdinand's death shocks Austria-Hungary. Monarchy perceives threat to dual monarchy stability. Political elites demand decisive response quickly. Diplomatic and military considerations dominate imperial council. Public reaction varies across empire's regions. Ethnic tensions exacerbate already fragile social structure. Nationalist movements inspired and emboldened by event. Assassination becomes pretext for aggressive policies. Government issues ultimatum to Serbia immediately. Demands strict compliance under threat of action. Serbia resists certain clauses cautiously. Diplomatic negotiations fail to prevent escalation. Assassination triggers chain reaction across Europe. Allied alliances mobilize against opposing powers. Crisis quickly escalates into continental tension. Imperial decisions drive momentum toward war. By mid-1914, Europe on edge. Dual monarchy prepares for military engagement. Events seen as catalyst for conflict. Franz Ferdinand's death marks turning point. Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia. Alliances quickly escalate regional conflict internationally. Germany supports dual monarchy in military operations. Russia mobilizes in defense of Slavic populations. European powers drawn into continental war rapidly. France, Britain, and allies prepare for combat. Western and Eastern fronts established simultaneously. Massive armies deployed across multiple territories. Initial battles see heavy casualties immediately. Trench warfare develops along extended front lines. Modern weapons increase lethality significantly. Industrialized warfare tests military organization severely. Dual monarchy faces logistical challenges repeatedly. Troop movements complicated by infrastructure limitations. Supplies strained by distance and battlefield losses. Communication disrupted across multi-ethnic army units. Naval operations limited. Focus on continental strategy. Blockades and sea control affect trade significantly. Empire relies primarily on German naval support. Economic strain increases due to wartime demands. Civilian populations experience shortages and hardship. Food, fuel, and essential goods constrained. Inflation rises. Public unrest grows slowly. Nationalist movements exploit wartime instability subtly. Political leadership pressured by military setbacks. Internal divisions magnified by ethnic tensions. Calls for reform and representation increase. Dual monarchy struggles to maintain cohesion effectively. By late 1914, war firmly underway. Empire fully committed to prolonged conflict. Allies and enemies entrenched across Europe. World War I becomes unprecedented continental struggle. Austria-Hungary suffers repeated defeats on multiple fronts. Italian and Russian armies challenge imperial forces. Morale declines among soldiers and civilians alike. Trench warfare causes devastating casualties continuously. Economic strain worsens due to wartime disruption. Food shortages provoke urban and rural unrest. Industrial production fails to meet military demand. Infrastructure damaged by sustained combat operations. Nationalist tensions intensify within multi-ethnic empire. Czechs, Slovaks, and South Slavs demand independence. Hungarians pressure government for concessions rapidly. Internal cohesion erodes under political and military pressure. Desertions and mutinies increase within army ranks. Soldiers question loyalty to imperial command. Dual monarchy loses ability to enforce discipline. Authority weakened in peripheral regions gradually. Allied advances threaten imperial territories directly. Front lines collapse in late 1918 progressively. Government struggles to maintain control nationally. Central authority unable to coordinate military response. Monarchy considers negotiation and surrender strategies. Peace discussions initiated with allies cautiously. Public confidence in leadership diminishes rapidly. Civil unrest accelerates disintegration of governance. By late 1918, empire on brink. Internal collapse mirrors external military failures. Dual monarchy cannot sustain wartime pressures. Breakdown occurs simultaneously across multiple regions. Political, social, and military systems fail. Empire disintegrates as nationalist movements prevail. Central authority loses legitimacy completely. Multi-ethnic state fragments under cumulative stress. National groups declare independence across former empire. Czechoslovakia emerges in Central European territories. Yugoslav state forms from southern Slavic lands. Hungary asserts sovereignty over rich traditional regions. Poland re-established with western territories recovered. Austria reduced to small, German-speaking republic. Borders redrawn by treaties and international agreements. New states recognized by League of Nations formally. Ethnic populations exercise self-determination actively. Minority groups negotiate for cultural and political rights. Language, education, and administration restructured regionally. National identities emphasized in emerging governments increasingly. Former imperial officials displaced or integrated locally. Local elites assume administrative and political control. New constitutions drafted reflecting democratic principles. Legal systems reorganized to suit independent states. Economic integration disrupted by dissolution of empire. Trade routes and markets divided along new borders. Currency and banking systems reorganized nationally. Industrial centers adapt to regional economic realities. Military forces reconstituted under national command. Soldiers returned from imperial army to local units. Security reorganized according to new political boundaries. Alliances formed to stabilize post-war Europe strategically. International oversight helped stabilize newly independent states. Treaties enforce territorial integrity and peaceful coexistence. Diplomats manage minority protections across borders. League of Nations mediates potential regional disputes. By 1918 to 1919, multiple nation-states firmly established. Empire's former territories now politically autonomous. Fragmentation reflects nationalist ambitions and wartime pressures. Central European map permanently altered after collapse. By late 1918, Austria-Hungary ceases to exist. Monarchy abdicates under internal and external pressure. Emperor Charles I relinquishes control formally. Central authority collapses throughout dual monarchy rapidly. Nationalist movements solidify control over territories. Czechs, Slovaks, and South Slavs govern independently. Hungary declares full sovereignty over remaining lands. Austria forms small republic in German-speaking areas. Treaties codify dissolution and new boundaries. Allies recognize emerging states internationally. League of Nations supervises post-war political arrangements. Former imperial territories divided among multiple nations. Administrative structures dismantled systematically across regions. Civil service and military disbanded or reassigned. Governments established reflecting ethnic and regional identities. Local populations assume responsibility for governance independently. Economic networks disrupted by territorial fragmentation. Currency, trade, and banking reorganized nationally. Railways and infrastructure adapt to new borders. Industrial centers face challenges from divided markets. Military dissolved or incorporated international forces. Veterans returned to civilian life cautiously. Strategic assets redistributed among successor states. Arsenals and forts controlled by emerging governments. Cultural identity transforms from imperial to national. Education systems realigned with independent nations. Language and historical narratives emphasized regionally. Public memory reframes former Habsburg legacy locally. By end of 1918, Europe reshaped. Austria-Hungary formally ceases to exist. Central Europe now dominated by independent nations. Dual monarchy becomes historical memory and case study. Austro-Hungary symbolizes imperial complexity clearly. Vast territories with diverse ethnic populations. Multiple languages, religions, and cultures coexist. Political system struggles to unify effectively. Dual monarchy attempts balance through compromise. Shared emperor unites distinct administrations symbolically. Separate parliaments manage internal affairs independently. Bureaucracy administers multi-ethnic populations painstakingly. Empire faces constant internal and external pressures. Nationalist movements challenge central authority regularly. Ethnic groups assert language, culture, and rights. Local loyalties often surpass allegiance to crown. Failure to reconcile nationalism and unity. Internal divisions prevent cohesive national identity. Ethnic aspirations clash with imperial governance. Dual monarchy cannot fully satisfy populations. Military power insufficient to enforce political cohesion. Army large but outdated, morale uneven. Mobilization complicated by bureaucracy and regional tensions. Defeats expose fragility of central authority. Diplomacy struggles amid European rivalries frequently. Alliances, treaties, and negotiations often insufficient. Balkans represent persistent hotspot of conflict. External threats exacerbate internal weaknesses consistently. Cultural brilliance flourishes despite political decline. Vienna becomes hub of music, philosophy, art. Figures like Mozart, Freud, and Klimt inspire. Coffee houses foster intellectual and social exchange. Education and science benefit from imperial patronage. Universities train administrators and professionals effectively. Research advances in medicine, physics, and psychology. Innovation supported even under conservative governance. Cultural life masks underlying instability subtly. Artistic and intellectual output flourishes visibly. Public entertainment distracts from political challenges. Festivals, performances, and exhibitions reinforce imperial prestige. Economic development uneven across empire significantly. Bohemia industrialized, while Hungary remains agrarian. Railways connect regions, but disparities persist. Urban centers prosper, rural areas lag behind. Annexation and foreign policy demonstrate ambition clearly. Balkans expansion and treaties reflect strategic aims. Military entanglement exposes empire to continental pressures. Alliances and rivalries complicate decision-making permanently. World War I accelerates collapse dramatically. Assassination triggers chain reaction across Europe. Military defeat and internal unrest dismantle authority. Nationalist movements seize opportunity to declare independence. Empire dissolves into multiple nation-states rapidly. Austria, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, and Yugoslavia emerge. Boundaries redrawn reflecting ethnic self-determination. New republics replace centuries-old imperial administration. Lessons emerge about diversity, power, and identity. Managing multi-ethnic state requires delicate balance. Tolerance, representation, and compromise are essential. Failure to harmonize diversity undermines governance. Legacy endures in Central European culture. Architecture, art, and music remain influential globally. Intellectual contributions shape modern thought extensively. Empire remembered for innovation amid fragmentation. A vanished empire whose echoes shaped Europe. Borders, alliances, and political institutions influence significantly. Nationalism, identity, and governance lessons remain relevant. Austro-Hungary's story illustrates complexity of human societies. Despite disappearance, memory influences contemporary understanding. Historians study dual monarchy for insights carefully. Political, social, and cultural history intertwined clearly. Empire provides cautionary tale for modern nation building.